There are things no doctor can explain, and some silences, they scream. This story begins on a stifling night, one of those nights where even a fan can't blow away the unease. The nurse was new at the house. She arrived in a white coat and a heavy heart. Her name was Eliza, the type who listens more than she speaks. She'd been hired to care for a man who, according to everyone, was no longer a man, just a body. Vegetative. Lying in bed for 5 years, breathing through machines. Skin paper thin, gaze lost in a deep void. His name was Osvaldo Ferraz, a famous businessman in the 90s, owner of a construction company, hotel, mall, and even a soccer team. Now, he was nothing more than a motionless silhouette in an expensive sheeted bed. His family, gone. They only showed up to sign paperwork or pose at charity events. Everything was being paid for by his old money, guarded closely by a lawyer colder than an unplugged freezer. On her first night, Elisa followed protocol, checked blood pressure, heart rate, adjusted the oxygen tube, everything normal, everything dead. But when she went to insert medication into his vein, she swore, with all her soul. She saw it, a blink, quick, subtle, but clear. "Mr. Osvaldo," she called, nearly breathless. Nothing. Silence. She stepped closer, touched his hand, cold beneath the skin. "If you heard me, blink again." Nothing. The next day, she mentioned it to the supervisor. They laughed at her. "It's just an impression, Eliza. Everyone thinks they saw something in the first few days. It's psychological." But on the third day, it happened. Again, only this time, it was different. The right eye blinked, twice. Elisa dropped her stethoscope and stepped back like she'd seen a ghost. She ran into the hallway and called another nurse, who looked at her with disdain and walked away mumbling. But Eliza, she knew. She saw it. At the end of her shift, she stayed alone with the patient for a few minutes. She opened a book and started reading aloud just to see if anything changed. And then, when she got to the part where the character was betrayed by his own brother, Osvaldo cried, a tear, alone, silent, falling from his left eye. And in that moment, Eliza felt it. This man was hearing everything, but what no one knew was that Osvaldo carried a secret on his body, something hidden, marked, something that could change everything. Some wounds close on the outside, but bleed from within. And sometimes, what's hidden in the skin is just a reflection of what's screaming from the soul. Elisa came back the next day with her mind racing. She hadn't slept all night, tossing and turning, wondering if she was losing it, but crazy or not. She saw the tear fall, and no one could take that from her. This time, she decided to do things differently. She arrived early and asked to care for the patient alone that morning. She disguised it well, said she wanted to build rapport with the case. They laughed, but allowed it. She began bathing him slowly, warm towel, gentle gloves. She cleaned the old man's body as if she were dusting off a forgotten story. And that's when, round his left rib cage, her eyes froze. A scar, small, shallow, but shaped. Strangely, it wasn't a surgical mark, nor from a fall, nor one of those jagged childhood cuts. It was a drawing, a slightly curved mark, like an ancient letter or a tribal symbol, something made with a fine blade or a hot iron, and strangest of all, it was enlisted in the medical records. "What is this, Mr. Osvaldo?" she whispered. Heart racing. She grabbed the clinic's tablet, accessed the internal files, searched through the entire patient history, 5 hospitalizations, 3 surgeries, cerebral stroke, ischemic stroke, but no mention of that scar. Even more, according to the records, that region had never even been touched by a scalpel. So, where did it come from? She snapped a photo discreetly and went to the break room. "Leo, can I ask you something?" she said to the nursing assistant. "What is it now?" "Eliza, don't tell me," he said. "Good morning." "No, I want you to see this." She showed him the image of the scar. Leo's eyes widened. He swallowed hard. "That mark looks exactly like the one on a guy who showed up dead near here last month. The police thought it was some cult or ritual." Eliza's stomach turned to stone. "You're serious?" "I swear. It was a symbol. It was carved into the chest of the dead man too. Same shape. Except his was cut deep." Eliza's hand shook. "Leo, this is on Osvaldo's body, and he's crying, blinking, reacting. He's awake inside." Her coworker laughed, but nervously. "Eliza, if that's true, You just stepped into something deep, and maybe there's no way back. They say if you go looking, you'll find. But no one warns you that what you find might be worse than what you lost. Elisa spent the rest of her shift walking on glass, every step in the hallway. Every click on the computer echoed too loud. But the worst was the silence in Osvaldo's room, a silence heavy like a secret poorly buried. That night, when everyone had gone home, she returned to the room, sat beside the bed, took a deep breath, and whispered, "I don't know if you can hear me, but if you can, blink. Please blink again." Nothing. "I saw your tear. I saw the scar. I'm trying to understand. Help me." And then, for the first time, his right pinky finger twitched. It was minimal, almost imperceptible, but it happened. Elisa covered her mouth with both hands. Tears fell without warning. That wasn't an involuntary reflex. It was a response. She grabbed her notebook and wrote, "Blink equals yes, to blinks equals no. Finger movement equals emergency." She returned the next day with the notebook and repeated the test. One blink, then another. No finger movement. It was as if Osvaldo was cooperating. But what seemed like a miracle turned into a problem when Osvaldo's eldest daughter showed up. Without notice in the middle of the afternoon. Tall, elegant, expensive perfume, and a look of someone who's never truly cried. "Who are you?" she asked, before even greeting her. "I'm Eliza, the new nurse. I'm taking care of your father." "Oh, another one. They never last." "He doesn't respond. You know that, right?" Elisa smiled faintly. "Ironic. Silence doesn't always mean absence, ma'am. Sometimes it means protection." The woman frowned. "I don't want you handling him too much. His skin is fragile. I've had problems with other nurses trying." The play detective. She left without looking at her father. Not a word. Just signed some papers and walked out. Elisa waited for the hallway to clear, went back into the room, and whispered, "Do you recognize that scar? Blink. Was it done by someone in your family? Blink. Was it her? To blinks." She wrote it down. "Do you want help to tell the truth?" Blink. And at that moment, she realized that Osvaldo wasn't just a man trapped in a body. He was a living witness to something rotten, something his family wanted to forget, but that was still there, carved in flesh and memory. Family. Some aren't worth a surname. They inherit the money and hide the shame. That night, Eliza couldn't contain her restlessness. She took the scar as a starting point and began a real silent investigation. First, she pulled up the morgue records from the neighboring town. Leo had mentioned a man with the same mark, and she had to see it with her own eyes. And she saw. Name, Samuel Nogueira. Body found with an open chest, symbol carved by knife. No ID, no witnesses. The police filed the case as a ritualistic crime. But what caught Eliza's eye was an old photo in one of the local papers. Samuel beside a younger Osvaldo. Friends, big smiles, same watch, same bracelet on their left wrists. And then it hit her. Elisa ran back to the clinic, waited for midnight, took the key from the staff files. One of the assistants always forgot to lock it, and went into the restricted document room. There, she found a dusty box labeled Ferraz. She opened it slowly. Photos, clippings, exams, and a burned letter, singed at the corners, handwritten. "If something happens to me, it wasn't an accident. The symbol is the key. Samuel knows, but beware of Claudia. She knows too much." Claudia, the daughter's name. Eliza's stomach knotted. She wasn't just a nurse handling a medical case. She had stumbled upon an old crime, buried under money and appearances. The next day, she tried something new. "Mr. Osvaldo, do you remember Samuel? Blink. Do you know what happened to him? Blink." "Elisa, excuse me?" It was Claudia, again, with a smirk and a colder tone than before. "I need your help picking a new physical therapist. The last one was dismissed for being too zealous. Let's say." Eliza forced a smile, but felt a chill down her spine. "Of course, I'm at your service." But as she turned to leave, she caught a glimpse, Osvaldo's eyes wide open, as if screaming. In silence, she wrote, "Claudia is hiding something. Samuel was his friend. The mark is a key." And for the first time, she was afraid to go on. The worst feeling in the world is knowing a truth no one wants to hear. Worse still, knowing some would pay a fortune to keep it buried. After that, Elisa couldn't do even the basics without feeling the pressure on her shoulders. Every medication, every signature, Every sideways glance from the staff felt like she was being watched. But she knew it wasn't paranoia. Someone was trying to silence any echo from the past. And that someone had a name, surname, and a key to the admin room. She decided to seek help, scheduled a meeting outside the hospital with a former professor of bioethics, Dr. Hugo Mariani, a soft-spoken man with a sharp gaze who'd seen far more rot than most could bear. "You're sure he's conscious?" he asked after hearing everything. "Not just conscious. He remembers, and he's afraid. And this scar, you said it looks like a ritual symbol. It doesn't just look like it. It's the same one found on a body linked to the family. I saw the photo. They were friends." Hugo rubbed his chin, gaze focused. "Eliza, you need to leave that house now. This isn't just about nursing anymore. This is a covered-up crime, and people with money don't forgive those who reopen old wounds. But what if I'm the only one who can help? That man, then brace yourself, because when truth threatens to come out, the wolves show up wearing sheep's clothing." Elisa returned to the clinic determined to document everything, every blink, every sign. She discreetly installed a micro camera on the bookshelf, and that night, she got the biggest confirmation yet. "Mr. Osvaldo, do you want to tell what happened that night with Samuel? Blink. Do you remember the location? Blink. Was it here, in the family mansion? Blink. Was it your daughter, Claudia, who ordered it? Blink." Silence, but not just any silence. The heavy kind. The kind that answers when words can single quotes. Elisa took the video to a tech-savvy friend who confirmed, "That's voluntary eye movement. An emotional reaction. That man is conscious." She tried to contact the public prosecutor's office, ignored. Tried reaching out to journalists. Nothing. Tried sending everything anonymously to an NGO. 2 days later, she was suspended from the clinic. Reason: invasive conduct toward high-risk patient. But Eliza knew. That was a warning, an attempt to silence her. She got home shaking, barely closed the door when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Short message: "You've gone too far. Be careful." And right then, she understood. This wasn't just about saving a patient. It was about surviving the truth. Some truths are so heavy that when we try to carry them alone, the world calls it madness. The suspension came as a veiled sentence. They gave her 30 days to reflect on inappropriate conduct. But behind the formal tone was something much dirtier than any official statement. Elisa spent the first few days trying to stay sane. She woke up in cold sweats, dreaming of blinking eyes in the dark. Tried to disconnect, but it was impossible. Osvaldo's face, the tears, the scar, they kept coming back. And on the 5th day, sitting in front of a cold cup of coffee, the mailman knocked. A brown envelope, no return address, with a handwritten phrase on the front. He tried to warn. She burned the evidence. Inside, an old photo, almost faded. It showed a young woman in a white dress stained with blood, and beside her, the man with the scar, Samuel, on the back of the photo, scribbled in shaky handwriting. That dress was hidden. "It's in the mansion, blue room, behind the bookshelf." Elisa's heart nearly stopped. The blue room was where the father's law books were kept. Claudia always kept that door locked. But Eliza had seen the key, silver metal, with a tiny symbol, the same one as the scar. She knew she couldn't go alone. More than that, if she tried and got caught, there'd be no turning back. But that dress might be the only physical proof left of a buried crime. She went to Leo's house. The assistant told him everything. "You've gone mad," he said, eyes wide. "Maybe, but if I'm right, that man witnessed a murder." And soon after he tried to speak up, he had a sudden stroke. No one ever questioned it. "You're saying he was drugged, that it was induced." "I'm saying there's an elegant woman named Claudia who buried the past with the same coldness she uses to close her father's bedroom door." Leo went quiet, then ran his hand down his face. "If you're going there, I'm going with you." "You sure?" "No, but someone needs to see this through." The next night, they jumped the mansion side gate. Leo knew the guard's schedule. They used a copy of the kitchen key he had made just in case. No one knew about it, not even the manager. They reached the blue room, locked. But Leo had learned a trick from his locksmith uncle, a piece of x-ray film between latch and lock. One firm push, and the door opened. Elisa ran to the bookshelf, touched the books, pulled out a false row, and there it was, a wooden compartment, locked with an old brass padlock. She broke it with pliers. Inside, The white dress, blood-stained, still damp in some parts, and with it, a crumpled letter, written by Samuel. Eliza, we have to go now. From the hallway, a light switched on. Footsteps. The blue room door began to open. The door creaked like a scream. Eliza froze. Leo closed his eyes for a second and held his breath. The two of them held the bloody dress in their hands, and the letter. All of it could be proof of a crime or a one-way ticket to disaster. But the door opened slowly, and it wasn't Claudia who entered. It was a child, small, hair tied in pigtails, light blue dress, and a teddy bear in hand. She looked at Eliza and Leo with curiosity and innocence. You're the lady who reads to Grandpa, right? She asked, as if all this were perfectly normal. Eliza tried to breathe. I am. And who are you, sweetheart? I'm Julia, Aunt Claudia's daughter. I saw you crying in Grandpa's room the other day. He cried too, didn't he? Eliza felt her chest tighten. You saw that? The girl nodded, then looked directly at the dress in Eliza's hands. That was Grandma's, right? Silence. Leo looked at Eliza. She swallowed hard. It was. How do you know? The girl pointed to the symbol embroidered at the hem. There's one just like it in Grandpa's room, under the bed, but Mommy said never to talk about it. Eliza knelt down in front of the girl. Julia, have you ever heard your grandpa speak? The girl hesitated, bit her lip, then nodded. One time, at night. He said Uncle's name, really softly. Samuel, forgive me. That sentence struck like lightning. Eliza's legs gave out. Leo grabbed her shoulder to steady her. Can you show me what's under his bed, sweetheart? Eliza asked gently. The girl nodded. But then a shout echoed from upstairs. Julia. It was Claudia. Harsh voice, furious. The footsteps were coming down the stairs. The girl trembled. I have to go, Julia said, running off. Eliza grabbed the dress, the letter, and hid behind the thick curtain. Leo turned off the lights. Seconds later, the doorknob twisted violently. Claudia entered. She looked around, sniffed the air suspiciously. Silence. She went to the bookshelf, ran her fingers over the books, frowned, noticed the dust out of place. Who's been here? She murmured. Her eyes fixed on the open shelf, and for a moment, her face hardened. But she said nothing, just turned and left. When the door slammed shut, Eliza released the breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. That was too close. Leo whispered. She opened the letter. Her hands shook. If you're reading this, it means I failed, and worse. She survived. I tried to stop her, tried to warn Osvaldo, but Claudia threatened me, said she'd make me disappear like she did her mother. The dress is the proof. The scar is the seal, a blood pact. If she finds you, run. Eliza's skin prickled. The mother, Julia's grandmother, Claudia's mother, the woman in the dress. Maybe the first victim. Asterisk. Some families aren't trees. They're mazes, and the more you try to escape, the more lost you get inside. Eliza spent the rest of the night awake, hidden with Leo in a disused supply room in the mansion's back wing. They knew if they left now, the risk of being seen was too high. And after what they'd found, the letter, the dress, the child's testimony, it was no longer just about a patient. It was about survival. Around 4 a.m., they decided to act. They went to Osvaldo's room. The door was slightly open. He lay there, or pretended to, with half-closed eyes and barely noticeable breathing. Eliza approached and whispered, Mr. Osvaldo, I saw the dress. I read the letter. Julia confirmed it. The truth is coming. And then, for the first time, the old man moved his jaw. It was slow, painful, but clear, as if he wanted to speak. Eliza placed a pen against his hand. If you can write anything, tell me what happened. Nothing. But he turned his head, slightly, looked at the wall. She followed his gaze and saw an old painting, a family portrait. In the lower corner, almost faded by time, what looked like a signature, but not from the artist. A word, a name. Helena. Was that your wife's name? Eliza asked doubly. Was she murdered? Blink. Was it your daughter? Silence. The right eye froze. The left. A tear. That said more than any yes. Eliza took the painting and turned it over. On the back, another note, handwritten. It read. She knew too much. Tried to escape. Didn't make it. I hid everything in the greenhouse. The brooch, the diary, the vial. If it's still there, be careful. Elisa's heart nearly stopped. The mansion's greenhouse was used for decorative plants. Almost no one went there, and it was isolated behind the inner garden. The only place Claudia never locked because, as they said, no one cared about dead flowers. Elisa and Leo left at dawn as the day broke colorless. They escaped through the back and went straight to the greenhouse. They broke the rusted latch. The smell inside was heavy, suffocating, and filled with memory. Among clay pots, dry leaves, and gardening tools, there was an old chest, covered with cloth. She opened it. Inside, a golden rose-shaped brooch, an empty vial, with traces of amber liquid, and a diary, handwritten, with delicate female script. First page. If anything happens to me, let Eliza read this. Because only she heard my husband cry, and only she had the courage to see. Elisa fell to her knees. Her hands trembled. Her eyes welled with tears. This wasn't just a warning, it was a cry for help from beyond death. And now she had the proof. But what she didn't know was that Claudia was also reading from afar and already planning her next move. Some people know how to smile while hiding a knife behind their back. And some dinners aren't celebrations. They're traps. The next day, Elisa received an unexpected call. Private number. Good afternoon, nurse. This is Claudia Ferraz. I'd like to invite you to a family dinner tonight. We need to talk, clear some things up. Mr. Osvaldo would be very pleased to see you again. Come at 8. The call ended without room for response. The tone wasn't an invitation. It was an order. And behind the polite voice, there was poison. Elisa hesitated. But she knew she couldn't back out now. She'd seen too much. She had the dead wife's diary in her bag, Samuel's letter, the video of Osvaldo blinking. Now was the time. She dressed plainly, placed the evidence in sealed envelopes, and left copies with Leo, along with a note. If I'm not back by tomorrow, send everything to the press. At 8 p.m. sharp, she arrived at the mansion, gate open, lights on, unsettling silence. A butler received her without making eye contact, led her to the dining room, where the table was set with silver cutlery, fine glasses, and expensive wine. But the atmosphere was ice-cold. Claudia appeared, tight black dress, hair pinned up, wine lipstick, razor smile. I'm glad you came. Sit down. Let's talk like the civilized women. Elisa sat. Mr. Osvaldo won't join us, she asked. Claudia poured the wine. My father is resting, exhausted. You know how it is. These emotional attempts drain terminal patients. Eliza held her gaze. He cried, Claudia. He blinked. He moved his head. Your father is conscious. The woman took a sip of wine. You're shaken. That's common in professionals who get too involved. I understand. I found your mother's diary. Claudia's glass froze midair, but her face didn't move. In the greenhouse. And the dress. Samuel's letter. I know what you did. Claudia placed her glass down with a soft chime. You know nothing, Eliza. And you should stop while you still can. You triggered your father's stroke, didn't you? He was going to report you. He was going to tell everything about your mother's death. Claudia leaned forward, her eyes now maskless. My mother took her own life. He just protected the family name. I did what had to be done to keep everything running. And you went too far. The door opened. Two security guards entered. Claudia stood. Please escort the nurse to the gate. She's no longer welcome. In this house, Eliza was grabbed by the arms. She tried to resist. You'll go down, Claudia. I'd have proof. The world will know. But the woman just smiled. The world doesn't care about proof. It cares about narratives, and I wrote mine. The door slammed behind Elisa. Outside, she staggered, but didn't fall, because deep down, she knew the storm was coming, and in her hands, she held the lightning to split it wide open. Some battles aren't won with weapons, but with the truth living inside a nearly dead body. That night, Eliza returned to Leo's small apartment. Her hands were cold, face pale, heart racing. She told him everything. She's trying to silence you, Leo said, horrified. But she won't succeed. We've got evidence. We need to release it now. No, not yet, Eliza said. There's something only Osvaldo can do. He needs to leave something written, recorded, clear. So when she denies it, there's no way to escape. The next morning, they snuck back into the clinic. Leo knew the guard's routine. With masks, Changed uniforms and a precisely timed plan, they reached Osvaldo's room. Elisa gripped his hand. "Mr. Osvaldo, it's time. I know it's hard, but if you can just one letter, a gesture, a name." He was paler than before, but his eyes shone with clarity. She placed a pen in his hand. A blank sheet of paper. And weighted slowly with inhuman effort. His hand moved. Drew a stroke, another, trembling. But there, at the end of the shaky line, Helena, his wife's name, and below, a crooked symbol, the same as the scar. Eliza fought back tears. Leo recorded everything with his phone. "Mr. Osvaldo, do you want justice? Blink. Want her to pay? Blink. Want the world to know." He moved his lips. No sound, but his mouth formed something Elisa would never forget. "Thank you." And then, his head gently tilted. The heart monitor remained steady, but his expression was peaceful. For the first time in years, Osvaldo looked free. Some secrets, when they rise from the grave, shake even the richest mansions to their core. The next morning, Elisa handed the envelope of evidence to a journalist who owed his life to her father. He was an old-school man with old-school ethics, the kind who still believed in truth written on paper, not likes on social media. "If this is real, it'll make national headlines, Eliza. But do you understand what you're walking into?" "I'm not walking into anything. I'm giving a voice back to someone they tried for years to silence." The journalist began cross-referencing the evidence, the diary, the symbol, Samuel's letter, the note hidden behind the painting, the video of Osvaldo blinking and writing Helena. It was all real, and it all fit like pieces of a bloody puzzle. Hours later, the city's most viewed news site blasted the headline, "Vegetative businessman writes dead woman's name, exposes family mystery." The story exploded. Within minutes, thousands of people were commenting. The story went viral. Former nurses who had worked at the house came forward with reports of pressure, threats, and sudden firings. And most shocking, the case of Samuel Nogueira's death was reopened by the district attorney's office. The press camped outside the mansion. Claudia didn't appear, but the next day, the family's lawyer held a press conference. "We are witnessing the clear attempt to tarnish the legacy of Mr. Osvaldo Ferraz. The allegations are absurd, and there is no material evidence of any crime. We ask for respect for the memory of Mrs. Helena, who passed away tragically more than a decade ago." Eliza watched everything from the journalist's office. Her hands trembled with anger. They're going to try to bury it again, and the living, if they can. But then, the tide turned. A former family housekeeper, Mrs. Teresa, now retired, saw the report and decided to speak. She gave an interview, shared photos, old letters, and even a planner with suspicious notes from the week of Helena's death. And then, the final blow, the police recovered the vial from the greenhouse. It was sent for analysis. Inside, traces of rare barbiturates used only in hospitals in the 1990s. The same substance found in Samuel's body. Now, it wasn't theory anymore. It was homicide with a pattern. Claudia was summoned, and for the first time in 20 years, the walls of the Ferraz mansion failed to protect anyone. Some stages aren't for theater, they're for justice. And some masks fall with just one piece of paper. The trial was scheduled in record time. Public outcry applied pressure. The media didn't blink, and Eliza was summoned as the star witness. Days before, she tried to visit Osvaldo at the clinic, but he had been transferred. At the family's request, they said no one knew where, or rather, no one wanted to say, but she didn't falter. She took the stand with her heart pounding and her eyes wet with tears. She told everything. From the first blink to the trembling letters on paper, the defense tried to discredit her, called her emotional, obsessive, unstable. But when the video of the old man writing Helena was shown, the room fell silent. Even the judge couldn't hold back emotion. Claudia, sitting next to her lawyer, kept her composure, eyes fixed, didn't blink once. But when they called Mrs. Teresa, everything crumbled. The former housekeeper spoke firmly, ending her testimony with a cutting line. "Helena Ferraz didn't jump. She was pushed, and I heard her, because she screamed her daughter's name seconds before." The prosecution requested preventive detention. The defense tried to delay, appealed. But the decision was clear. Claudia Ferraz is to be held in custody until the final ruling, charged with attempted homicide of her father and suspected involvement in the deaths of Helena. Faraz and Mr. Samuel Nogueira. Eliza left the courthouse with tears in her eyes and her shoulders lighter than they had been in months. But something was still missing. Osvaldo. Where was he? Some reunions need no words, because a gaze says everything the heart has screamed for years. 2 weeks later, Eliza received a simple letter, no return address. Inside, only an address, and one phrase: he wants to see you. It was a countryside house, far from the city, wooden gate, overgrown garden, the silence of the rural air. A nurse opened the door and led her to a room with wide windows and a scent of lavender. There he was. Osvaldo. Thinner, paler, but awake, truly awake. No tubes, no feeding line, breathing on his own, eyes alive. Elisa entered. He smiled with his eyes. She approached, took his hand. I promise I'd make the world hear you, remember. He moved his lips, weak but audible. You were my voice, she cried, not from pain, but from peace. Beside the bed, on a wooden nightstand, there was only one item, a golden rose-shaped brooch, and below it, a note: truth blooms, even where they tried to salt the earth. Osvaldo closed his eyes and slept. After some pain doesn't rot, it becomes a seed and blooms where no one expects it. After the meeting with Osvaldo, Elisa knew her mission was over, but not in the sense of an ending, in the sense of transformation. Her story and that man's was no longer a secret. It was a symbol, a scream, an example. The news of Claudia's conviction went global. The final ruling confirmed the crimes: attempted qualified homicide against her father, and proven involvement in the deaths of Helena Faraz and Samuel Nogueira. Combined sentence, over 30 years. The Faraz family, once a symbol of power and influence, was investigated for tax evasion, hush money payments, corruption in private clinics, and had all their assets frozen. The mansion was seized and, ironically, turned into a shelter for domestic violence victims. The name of the project: Helena Institute. Voices that will not be silenced. Leo became the director of the new facility. Elisa, general coordinator. In the room where Osvaldo was once trapped, there's now a bookshelf with Helena's diary on display in a glass case. And in the garden, they planted golden roses, like the brooch that carried her memory. As for old Osvaldo, he lived another 6 months. He underwent therapy, wrote letters, donated most of what remained of his fortune to the shelter. He never gave interviews. He only said, "My story's been told by someone brave enough to listen." On the day of his death, Eliza was there, alone, holding his hand. He passed as he had lived his final months, in peace, and was buried with the brooch on his chest, and Helena's name whispered one last time. Some stories don't end when the casket closes. They end when someone finally listens and spreads it, because some people don't die. They become seeds of truth. After Osvaldo's funeral, Elisa walked alone to the garden where golden roses now bloomed. She sat on the wooden bench, the same one Helena used to sit on to read. According to the former housekeeper, the wind was soft but carried a different scent. One of new beginnings there, with the brooch in hand. Eliza remembered her first day at that house, the silence, the gaze, the blink, and thought, if I had ignored it, he would have died without saying a word. He'd have taken his scream to the grave, but he didn't, because someone stopped and listened. The following month, the Helena Institute was officially open. Authorities attended, the media, former patients, people who'd never known where to ask for help. Elisa took the stage with Leo beside her and gave a simple, direct speech, no flourishes. This place is for those who were not believed, for those told they were exaggerating, that it was in your head, that no one will believe you. Here, we believe, because we saw, and because one man, whom everyone thought was dead inside, screamed with his eyes and saved not just himself, but an entire story built on lies. The applause was long, but what touched Eliza most was a hug from Julia, Osvaldo's granddaughter. The girl whispered softly in her ear, "Thank you for giving my grandpa back to me, even if only for a little while." Eliza cried, but now she cried with lightness. The story inspired a documentary series that toured the country. Similar cases began surfacing, people trapped in their own bodies, but conscious, slowly. Laws were revised, rights were gained, hospital protocols were updated, because someone dared to believe that a blink was more than a reflex. It was a word. Elisa returned to her life, soul transformed, She continued at the institute, but also began giving lectures, teaching young nurses how to hear what isn't spoken, how to notice what lives in silence, how to read tears as if they were open letters. At the back of the reading room at the institute, there's now a mural with a single phrase, when no one else listened. She heard me, Osvaldo Farzan, every day. Someone new stands before those words, in silence, and sees themselves in them. Because this isn't just the story of a rich man trapped in his own body. It's the story of everyone who has ever wanted to scream and had no voice, and who maybe, one day, just needed someone like Eliza. Some live in silence, but weren't born to die unheard. And if you've read this far, it's because you know a story worth telling. When you see one, so tell me, what did you think of this tale? Leave a comment, hit the like to support the channel, and subscribe so you don't miss another good story like this. See you next time from your Grandpa Rich.